Hello, shalom, God bless you. So we're going to be going over a little bit of First Samuel, okay? And just to give you a little bit of background first, um, this is going over Saul's foolish order, and it starts off with Samuel growing old. He's a prophet at the time that was a judge um, for the people of Israel, right? And the people of Israel, they respected him, they revered him as a prophet. From an early age, he was devoted by his mother, um, and her praise at the beginning of the first chapter is actually very powerful. Um, she didn't have a child at all; she was barren, and it says that her nemesis always made fun of her every time they went up to go offer to the Lord every year, and she wept. She didn't eat. She was sad. So she gave up Sam. She prayed to the Lord, and Eli, the priest at the time, he heard, and he thought she was drunk. Well, it turns out that she was like, "No, actually, I'm just really in pain right now. I would like a child, and I hope that I find favor." And he said, "Oh well, whatever it is that's on your heart, like that's troubling you, the Lord, blesses you." And she was like, "Oh, thank God, like that's awesome." Well, anyway, she goes back, she starts work. She's happy now. She's not sad anymore. Her countenance is lifted, right? Well, she trusts in the word of the Lord. She ends up having the Lord remembers her prayers, gives her a child, because she says that if he gives her a child, that she'll give the child to him in service, right? Well, she weans him off. He grows up, and she gives him to church. Now this is Samuel. So fast forward, um, Samuel grows old, and after judging the people of Israel for as long as he did, he sends a child again. Remember, serving the church. He has two sons who are going to be following behind him, but they're wicked. They're not following in his ways, in his footsteps, and the people want a king instead. Well, instead of taking heed to Samuel's warnings, because when they told him that they wanted a king, he saw it as being displeasing, or in other translations it says evil to want a king, because something didn't sit right with him, right? So he goes and talks to God about it, and they still wanted a king even though he warned them. And God's response to Samuel was this is just a little snippet of it from chapter 8, verses 1 through 9 of 1 Samuel. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them, because God used prophets and judges to keep his people in check since Moses' time, right? When he delivered them from Egypt. They get a king whom God chose. This king, right? So Saul, this chosen man, he goes looking for his dad's donkeys, and he's looking all over the land of Israel, and he ends up meeting Samuel because his servant's like, "Hey, there's a prophet here, a man of God. Like, we should go talk to him. He knows everything. So let's go see what's up, right? Maybe he can help us out." And well, he goes there, and it happened to be at the appointed time that the Lord our God ended up telling Samuel, the prophet, that the man who God has chosen as the appointed king is going to be meeting him at this time. Well, Saul walks up to Samuel, and he's like, "Whoa, hey, like you're the guy." Like, no, God says like that's him, that's the guy. And he's like, "Oh, hey, like come with me. We're gonna go to the high place where he was gonna be doing the offerings and stuff like that. And you're gonna go sit with me. We're gonna eat." So, and then I'll tell you about everything that's on your heart. So he tells him about the donkeys they're found, stuff like that. You know what I mean? He's showing that he's a prophet, living as a prophet. And Saul, humble and lowly, when he was told that he was going to be appointed as king, he was like, "I'm from the smallest tribe, and my family's the smallest of the families in that tribe. Like, what, for real? Me? You sure?" And he's humble, lowly, and he even hid behind baggage when he was going to be brought up in front of all of Israel at their meeting time, or the meeting place. He hid behind a bunch of baggage, and they had to go get him. They asked God where he was, and he told them he was hiding behind baggage, so they ran and got him. It's pretty funny. That was funny to me. And so shortly after that, though, even though he's like hiding, from his appointing of being a king, right? Appointment of being a king, his calling, even though he's hiding from it, and he's showing that he's lowly and stuff like that. He is no coward, because shortly after that, the Spirit of God came upon Saul mightily when he had heard the Yabesh needed help and led the deliverance of them from the Ammonites. After that, the people who followed and fought, they wanted to put those who despised and didn't believe that he was worthy to be king. After he got appointed in front of all the Israelites, there were still people that says that they were worthless fellows, and they were like, nah, this guy, like, are you sure he can lead us? They didn't want to give him presents, nothing like that. So, yes. So then they, like, oh, let's put those guys to death. Like, they don't believe in our king. And Saul then responds with, not a man shall be put to death this day, for today the Lord has accomplished deliverance in Israel. So he's showing that he still is actually like, he's got reverence for God, right? And he is still showing love, even to those people who were against him, like, loving thy enemies, even before that was a commandment, right? It's really, really good stuff. So you can see why God chose him, right? When Samuel appointed Saul the prophet, Saul the appointed king, again he spoke of how displeasing wanting a king is to God, and showed them a sign by asking the Lord to thunder and rain on the day of the wheat harvest. Basically a reminder that a reminder like Deuteronomy was, right? Thou shalt follow the commandments of the Lord thy God, or if you don't, then things are not going to go well, right? And if you do, then things are going to go great. Well, that's Samuel chapter 12 verses 6 through 25 if you want to read it. And then Samuel chapter 13 verses 8 through 14, Saul then takes matters into his own hands instead of waiting on the Lord's timing and commandments. Samuel tells Saul, after he goes and does this offering, right, by himself without Saul. Saul was supposed to be doing it. Or Samuel was supposed to be doing it, and Saul did it himself because he was in a hurry. People were scattering all over the place. The Philistines were walking up on him. He was scared. So he was like, I need to ask for the Lord's favor. I'm going to do the sacrifice myself. Well, he shouldn't have. And Samuel tells him why. Samuel tells Saul he acted foolishly, and the Lord would have established his kingdom over Israel forever. But now it won't endure. The Lord has sought out for a man after his own heart. David walked in EMET before God. 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 6. Okay, and I'll go over that later. The Lord has sought out for a man after his own heart, and appointed him as ruler over God's people, because Saul didn't keep what the Lord commanded him. Right? He didn't wait. He wasn't patient enough. He acted on his own accord. God don't want that. Especially someone with great responsibility comes with great power comes great responsibility, right? So, and great consequences. Saul's son, Jonathan, immediately after, leads the Israelites to victory over the Philistines, and doesn't know about Saul's foolish order, which is 1 Samuel chapter 14, verses 24 through 26. To not eat till he has avenged himself of his enemies, because he said if they do, then they're going to be cursed, right? It says, then there was a literal flow of honey in the forest. Okay? Honey was literally flowing across the forest floor, all right? And no one ate it because they'd then be cursed, right? Except for Jonathan, because he wasn't there. He was off. He went around, and he ended up causing a bunch of chaos for the Philistines, which then led to their victory. Well, because Jonathan ate, he was cursed. And they went and stood before the Lord, and he was like, all right, here I am. I must die. Like, he was about it. He stood 10 toes down, like, even for fighting for God, and then even when it came down for him to die, even though he didn't know, right? So, then the people, though, they save him, since he led the victory over the Philistines. Now, the point of all this, right? God brought to my attention how Saul had selfish motives for the fast when he told him not to eat. His foolish order. And the people were slaves to his desires, just as they were warned by Samuel, which they were warned in Samuel chapter 12, verses 6 through 25. I think it was verse 25 when he tells them that they're going to be slaves to the king. and the people were slaves to his desires, right? As they were warned by Samuel. Had they said no to a king and followed Melech HaMelechim, the King of Kings, there would have been a time and place for fast properly. Because the fasts are meant for God, and they would have been able to eat and enjoy the literal promise of the land from the Lord, which is that the land flowed with milk and honey. But instead they couldn't. They probably went back, got some. I would. After the fast, right? After the day. After they avenged, and then the vow was done with, let's go get some honey, man. Come on. But they chose their desires through free will, and now are slaves to another man's desires. Now some may wonder, okay, why not wanting bad judges is a problem, like, Samuel's sons. Why is it that it's bad to ask for a king when these judges that are, following after Samuel the prophet are bad? Like, it says that they take bribes, they just do whatever they want, right? Well, the problem is not wanting proper leadership is fair, okay? But not trusting God's sovereignty is when things go south. Look at Judges chapter 9 for reference. It's when Abimelech, his conspiracy against his 70 brothers, right? Because he was a concubine's son from the man who had all the 70. I can't remember the name of the father. I should have looked that up. I'm sorry. Just a couple verses before. And anyway, this guy, that guy dies, right? All right, I looked it up. It's Jerubbaal or Gideon, right? So that was the father. And Abimelech goes and kills 69 of his 70 brothers and reigns in place of all those judges. Well, his reign only lasted 3 years because it was wicked. Unlike all the other judges before him who lasted, even his father, 40 years of peace after, they get delivered. So that's how it worked when they made it to the promised land. The people of Israel would, turn their face from God. Like, they would go and serve other gods that can't breathe, can't speak, can't see, nothing, right? And a couple times God was like, deliver yourselves, figure it out. Because every time that they would get delivered by a judge or a prophet, they would eventually just go back, even after, 20, 40 years or whatever. So they didn't trust in God's sovereignty, which then led them to wanting a king. And God knew that it was a bad idea, and he told them, even through his prophet. But they still wanted one, so he gave them one. Now, EMET, right? David walked in EMET before God. The verb form for EMET is he-amin, which means to believe, have faith, to consider someone trustworthy, or to trust. We walk in he-amin with God. God shows us EMET. So, walk in he-amin with Melech HaMelechim, and let the Lord our God show you his EMET, his trustworthiness, his faithfulness, because he is faithful even if we are not. When we are faithless, he is still faithful because he cannot deny himself, right? Philippians? So, God bless y'all. I hope that this all makes sense and it was easy to follow. Couldn't help but make it. I don't know. This is good. It's good, right? The Holy Spirit was telling me about it, and he was just like, "That'll preach." So figured out, I put it out there. I'll help y'all out because it helped me. God bless y'all.